Good evening, I'm David Muir. Tonight on World News, 3,000 American troops have now died in Iraq. The sobering new milestone comes as the country stands on the eve of another year of war. After Saddam, the former dictator is buried under cover of darkness as new details surface of the fury and chaos inside the execution chamber. Paying tribute as the American people remember President Ford, tonight a rare personal look back at a president's playful side. And the images of 2006, the moments that made the year, from the heartbreaking to the heroic to the hopeful.
From ABC News headquarters in New York, this is World News.
Good evening. 2006 is ending with a powerful reminder of loss and sacrifice for a nation at war. Today, the death toll of American troops in Iraq reached 3,000. Almost 4 years into the war, this painful milestone comes as Iraq buries Saddam Hussein and as President Bush struggles to chart a course for a war that will now rage into a new year. So we begin tonight with ABC's John Hendren at the Pentagon.
Military analysts disagree over whether a surge of new forces will make Baghdad more secure and buy some time to better train Iraqi forces. Some fear it might just make Iraq's sectarian militias more effective at killing one another. John Hendren, ABC News, the Pentagon.
Meanwhile, from Iraq, we learned more today about how Saddam Hussein died. The unofficial video, apparently made by witnesses, reveals an ugly picture. The deep divisions inside that country reached even into the death chamber. As ABC's Terry McCarthy reports from Baghdad tonight, that video could make those divisions even deeper.
Hussein was more feared than loved by most Iraqis, even his own Sunnis. But the unseemly manner of his execution will only further erode the confidence Sunnis have in the Shiite-dominated government and make an end to violence here even harder to achieve. Terry McCarthy, ABC News, Baghdad.
Of course, ending that violence in Iraq tops President Bush's agenda heading into 2007. He has promised to unveil a new strategy for the war in the early days of the new year, still dogged by failures of this past year. ABC's Jeff Morrell is with the president in Crawford, Texas.
A senior White House official assured me today the president got the message of the midterms. Americans expect their leaders to work together, and he will do just that in the coming year. If not, David, he may become a lame duck sooner than he would like.
ABC's Jeff Morrell in Crawford, Texas tonight. Jeff, many thanks. Overseas tonight, New Year's celebrations have been shattered by 9 bomb blasts in Bangkok, Thailand. The bombs exploded across the city, killing at least 2 people and injuring about 3 dozen, including an American. It marks a violent end to a year of turmoil in Thailand, which saw a military coup and growing attacks by Muslim insurgents in the southern part of that country. And back in this country, the powerful storm that hit Colorado with its second blizzard in a week is moving east tonight, dumping snow on the plain states from Minnesota to Kansas. As the dig-out continues in Colorado, a lot of roads are still closed, but flights in and out of Denver's airport are back to normal. In Washington tonight, Americans continue to pay respects to Gerald Ford. The former president's casket will remain in the Capitol Rotunda through tomorrow night. Tuesday morning, it will be moved to the National Cathedral for a funeral service. But overnight in Vail, Colorado, where the Ford family still has a home, there was a different kind of memorial. Hundreds of skiers carrying torches, slowly making their way down the mountain in a glowing tribute. ABC's John Cochran has been a Washington correspondent for more than 30 years, and tonight, how he and the nation are remembering a president.
Today was the people's turn. Unlike last night's VIP mourners, today these were people who may not have known Jerry Ford personally, but they still respected him. His son, Jack, thanked them for coming. They said it was their honor to be there.
He was such a wonderful man, besides being our president.
It's really good to be able to point to somebody like Gerald Ford as an example of honor and integrity.
Mr. Ford was a frail old man at the end.
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear.
But when he became president, he brought physical health and vigor to the White House. For months, the nation had watched Richard Nixon crumble under the pressures of Watergate.
I assume the presidency under extraordinary circumstances never before experienced by Americans.
Then Jerry Ford stepped in, same age as Nixon, but exuding optimism and offering the nation a fresh start.
Mr. President.
A fresh start, too, for those of us in the White House press corps. Richard Nixon despised reporters, putting some on his enemies list. Jerry Ford said anyone with an enemies list had too darn many enemies. He and his wife were comfortable with the press. She talked openly about what she would do if her children used drugs or if her teenage daughter got pregnant. That worried Ford's political advisors. He couldn't care less. During their vacation one summer, we put on a skit for the Fords. The guy with the bad haircut is me wearing a T-shirt that says Jerry. I pretended to be the president and sang, "I've grown accustomed to her ways." That's Bob Schieffer singing backup. Possibly we were a little too familiar with the Fords, but they loved it. Ford rarely disliked people, but in the '76 campaign he came to dislike Jimmy Carter. Ford's narrow defeat was hard for him to accept. That Christmas, still president, he went to Vail, Colorado for the holidays. On New Year's Eve, his press office announced without explanation that in the year ahead he would push statehood for Puerto Rico. We were stunned. That night at a party, I asked Ford why he had suddenly developed this new concern for Puerto Rico. He said, "Well, I wanted to remind that peanut farmer down in Plains, Georgia, that for the next 3 weeks I'm still the president." Of course, he and Jimmy Carter eventually became close friends. Jerry Ford never could hold a grudge. John Cochran, ABC News, Washington.
The playful side of a president tonight. ABC News will continue to bring you complete coverage of the ceremonies honoring President Ford. Charles Gibson will be in Washington Tuesday for the services at the National Cathedral as the country remembers. New Year's Eve is a time when we pause both to look forward and back at the tide of events that swept over us in the past 12 months. As the clock ticks toward 2007, the nation's attention is, of course, focused on the death of President Gerald Ford. But now we take time to celebrate some of the other lives well lived that came to an end in 2006.
For all.
He's my best friend. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is my best friend.
The dogs were able to do it, that they were that good.
Come on, Cook. Come on, Cook.
They're gonna put me in the movies. Yeah, they're gonna make a big star out of me. Well, we'll make a scene about a man that's sad and lonely. Yeah, and all I gotta do is act nice.
Now I have a chance to do something I know how to do.
One more time, James Brown.
I'm here good.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have something if you wanna be with me.
You'll never find, as long as you live, someone who loves you tender like I do.
All through the night, safe till the morning light.
Some of the memorable images of 2006. And as the year comes to a close, we wanted to catch up with one of the most unforgettable people of the year, a young man who stepped off the sidelines and right into the spotlight and wrote his own Hollywood ending.
It was the final home game of the year for this Rochester, New York high school basketball team. And in the final moments, the coach did something he'd never done. He put 17-year-old Jason McElwain into the game. Jason is autistic, and until then had mastered only the role as team manager, but that is not the role he'll be remembered for.
4 minutes, 19 seconds.
Were they the best 4 minutes, 19 seconds of your life?
Probably, yes. The best ever.
The first couple of shots he missed, but the ones that followed...
I dribble down here. Oh, I get the ball here on a screen, then shoot it in.
Just like that?
Yep. And everyone started going nuts.
Nuts because Jason would then nail 3 3-pointers in a row, then 3 more.
Tell me how it felt, though, when you started nailing those 3-pointers.
Never shot that well in my life. Never in my life if I've ever shot that well in my life.
And you'll never forget it.
Never forget.
No one will.
Jason's 4 minutes in the game led to more than 15 minutes of fame. The story of that night spread from the White House to the West Coast.
I call him J-Mac. You call me George W.
There is now a book deal and a movie in the works, but Jason, he's still perfecting his shot. And mine.
Bend your knees.
All right.
Jump and shoot. Finally made it. Finally made it.
Did you ever think in your wildest dreams there'd be a movie in the works about you?
No. Not in my life. No.
What should they call it?
Hot as a pistol?
Hot as a pistol? Hot as a pistol. And that is world news for this Sunday and for the year. I'm David Muir. We leave you tonight with some of the celebrations around the world welcoming 2007. From all of us here at ABC News, we wish you a happy new year and good night.